If you have missed coverage of PrusaSlicer 2.4, you are in for an awesome update. It's finally here, PrusaSlicer 2.4 official release. Let's get into it. I can't tell you how freaking excited I am about PrusaSlicer 2.4 finally coming out of alpha, beta, and then release candidate into the official release of PrusaSlicer 2.4. 2.3 is dead to me. 2.4, oh my gosh, so much better. Since we tried Alpha 1 way back in the day, card to that video so you guys can take a look, I have never used 2.3 again. Even the alphas and some of the betas were a little bit buggy. As buggy as they were, it was worth it because there were some really big key features here. Let's go over a couple of them. We've got multi-material painting. That's a huge one, especially if you have an MMU, a tool changer, or an IDEX printer, or any machine that utilizes more than one color. You no longer have to have separate STL files. All you need to do is just paint it. So if you are a 3D modeler, or you like to support them, and if you don't support Wexter, you don't support Fotis Mint, you don't support DSK, you don't support FR3D Fred, and some of the other amazing people out there, what the hell are you doing? Go support them because they're awesome. We'll link to all their Patreons down below. And hey, while you're down there, make sure to leave a like and get subscribed. And if you want to support us directly, our Patreon link is down there as well, with tiers starting as low as $1 freaking dollar. But MMU painting is absolutely amazing. You can be just like Mr. Deadpool Bob Ross over there and paint happy little freaking trees into whatever the hell you want now. It is absolutely amazing to see this come out and be full-fledged release. I am so excited. We've got improved supports and bridging, and this to me is probably one of the biggest improvements. I don't have a lot of multi-material printers. We have one IDEX printer review coming soon, but that's it. We have a full color 3D printer, which uses powder, so I'm kind of spoiled in that I've had full color 3D printing for years. But I would like to, at some point, get an MMU, try it out, maybe the next iteration of the Prusa MMU. So if you guys want to see that, make sure to let us know down in those comments. But the painting is cool. Supports, however, is really where I think the biggest change has been made. We would print a lot of very thin parts for clients, and some of these really thin parts would see support being truncated through the part where it was not necessary and would sometimes even cause issues in the print itself. That's not good. We didn't like that, and with this new system, not only do you get better support when you use grid, but you have snug supports, which really just holds onto your part like a big warm hug and make sure that everything stands well. You guys might have seen it. We've shown plenty of prints utilizing snug supports, and they all work basically perfectly. We've had a few small issues, but that's more of the support and the printer side rather than it is on the slicer side. The bridging has also gotten a lot better. You don't have to use thick bridges anymore. Previously, they would use thick bridges as a means to do bridging, but now your bridging can be the exact same thickness as your part itself, which to me, absolutely the right way to do it. Absolutely the right way. There, of course, is a shape gallery and fuzzy skin. And yes, for those that are wondering, fuzzy skin is a direct port from Cura. This is what open source is about, people. Everybody loved fuzzy skin from Cura. I can kind of, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of it. I know in some cases it's useful, but for us, But realistically, it's a great little feature, and we actually showed this off. We created our own PrusaSlicer 2.4 test model, which we will link down below, available, of course, on prusaprinters.org. But what I think is pretty awesome is now having Windows dark mode. Now, some of you out there might be heathens and love light mode, and so it just burns your corneas, as a lot of us tend to be night owls. Dark mode enables that beautiful darkness to seep deep into your soul. I mean, it enables you to have less eye strain. We also now have brim for individual objects. Previously, when you would put a brim, it would just wrap the brim around your entire part. It wouldn't really do it right. Your support material would also be wrapped in a brim, which was not all that useful. Now what it does is it will replace that support base layer with brim that will be attached to the part. One thing I don't personally like, though, is that stock, the brim separation gap is not 0, it's 0.1. And if your printer is reasonably well tuned, that is not going to touch your part. So that is something to be aware of. Make sure you tune that brim gap so that it does actually touch your part, because if it doesn't touch your part, it's not gonna work. It's like my one gripe about this. We have negative volumes that enable you to take a shape, whether that is a part or a generic shape from inside of the shapes gallery, and cut it out of a model itself. It's pretty awesome. I believe that's more useful if you're doing things like trying to hollow something, but you want it to be a negative volume hollow. You're trying to create dead space inside of a model to save on material. But personally, I haven't found a lot of practical uses for it yet. If you know of one, let me know down in those comments. I'd like to be able to try it out practically rather than just utilizing it for the fact that it's possible. Automatic color change for logos and signs is another awesome feature, where Joe Clippy, and if you don't know Joe Clippy, don't worry, we're gonna talk about him real soon. But he'll let you know, hey, we noticed that you have some very obvious layers here. Would you like us to cut this up to be a sign? And it will automatically add in those layer changes so that it will pause the printer, wait for you to go ahead and change the color, and then go ahead and resume so you can do multicolored signs. This used to be a little bit more difficult, and the fact that it's now automated is pretty damn awesome. We, of course, now have tip of the day inside of Prusa Slicer. So Joe Clippy comes, gives you a nice little bit of information. Did you know that you can schedule the print to pause at a specific layer? Right-click the layer slider in the preview and select Add Pause Print, M601. This can be used to insert magnets, weights, or nuts into your prints. Read more about this in the documentation. It's Joe Clippy! It's Joe Clippy! I love Joe Clippy. Now, I am not running Windows dark mode. When we do a full look at this here in just a minute, I will change it over dark mode so you guys can see it. But the initial implementation of dark mode inside of the betas and the alpha was okay. It was okay. Model simplification is also great. If you have a model that you want to take low poly and you want to do it fast, you can use the model simplification tool inside of Prusa Slicer 2.4. Again, haven't really found a great use for this practically, but I think if you are looking to do some more abstract style art, you could take something like the Wario here and go ahead and add very, very, very few triangles. Cut it way down to be maybe 100 polygons rather than 1,000,000 or however many it might be. The support for 3 lab print airplane models, that's a very specific niche thing. If you guys want us to talk about that, let me know and we'll do it in a completely separate video. And of course, new third-party printer profiles, because of course a lot of companies have been jumping on the Prusa Slicer bandwagon, because I know the name might be confusing. Prusa Slicer is not just for Prusa printers. It's not. And they're even now providing 64-bit ARM builds for a Raspberry Pi. Yes, you heard that correct. You can run Prusa Slicer on a Raspberry Pi or an ARM-based Chromebook, which is pretty damn cool, especially considering that a lot of schools are utilizing Chromebooks in the classroom, this now gives students the ability to utilize Prusa Slicer on their Chromebooks without doing a lot of technical wizardry magic that's well beyond my knowledge base. We can take a look and see that all you have to do is click. Now, we're going to go into MMU painting a little bit here, and we will have a completely separate video talking all about MMU painting. So make sure you guys get subscribed if you want to see that coming up. But it can even detect, based on where the triangles and polygons are located, of where you want the paint to be. It is so much easier now. Actually, we made this Wario. I'll put it on screen right here for you guys. We actually made it for one of our patrons who signs up for the Print of the Month tier. So he gets a cool custom model every single month. But you can see that the paint is gorgeous. Look at these models. Seriously. This is not the previous version of needing a bunch of STL files that are in pieces that then hopefully all stick together for MMU. It's just straight up painted. And I love it. With the Smart Fill and Bucket Fill tools, it makes the painting quite a bit easier. Now, let's go into Prusa Slicer. We've talked about this stuff enough, okay? And there is so much more. We are going to link to the blog post down in the description. It's roughly an 11-minute read, according to them. You guys can take a look at it at your own leisure. But let's jump right into Prusa Slicer 2.4, the official release, and show off some of these new features for you real time. Here we are. It looks a little familiar, but it's a little too bright. Let's turn out the lights. So this is what dark mode looks like to me, and well, I think it could still use some work, so we're just gonna go ahead and turn her back into regular day mode. So I'm sorry, the lights are coming back on. I know, avert your retinas. But this looks very, very familiar, as I said before, and a lot of it is very familiar. Let's bring it apart and let's kind of take a look at some of these new features. You know, we got to run the benchy. Got ourselves a benchy here, and we're going to take a look at, again, some of these things. Now, a lot of what we showed off in the Alpha 1 have completely stayed the same into the 2.4 physical release. And actually, I want to grab our test models. Let me grab our test model that we did from Prusa Printers, and let's take a look at it that way. We've now got our torture test model, and you can see that I accidentally designed it in the wrong orientation. Sue me. Is what it is, guys. But we can at least take a look at some things here by going ahead and placing it on a face. Place on face is right there. Boom, nice and flat. Benchy, I'm just gonna send you off into Never Never Land. I'm gonna spin this around because branding is important. But if we look, we've got some things here that would normally toy with support settings. Things like the very, very thin inset logo is likely going to play around with support settings. Let's take a look. Yeah, so we got the thin inset logo here. You can see the light blue. That is all wanting to do supports, but we don't want that. Instead, what we want to do is go through and custom paint the supports ourselves, right? So we're going to make our brush a little bit bigger just to make this faster. One there. So there we go. We got a little bit of support material on there, but I do want to show off maybe the bridges. So we can hit shift and that will remove it, or we use the right mouse button to go ahead and actually physically block the supports. So this will force it to bridge over this area. We look here and we can then look at doing some more support material here. Real simple. Again, the paint on it makes life a lot easier. We're going to do some paint on here as well, and this is really to play around with your snug supports. The snug supports are really one of the better features in this, and we've got overhangs in most directions so that you're able to kind of play around with that and get it to really work the way that you want. Similarly, over here, we've got a nice filleted edge. So again, we can have the support where we need it and don't have it where we don't need it. So we can go up into our print settings and take a look at everything. This is what it is, bone stock on the quality profile. I prefer the quality profile. If you want to speed it up, you can. It's not really all that necessary, though. You do get beautiful prints this way. 15% in gyroid, because gyroid is awesome. Gotta love gyroid. We're gonna leave support material off for now, just so we can see it. We got all of our normal settings to be the way that they should be. And again, I'm showing this in expert mode. We're gonna add an inner brim, but we're gonna do one at 2mm, and let's take a look and slice it and see what happens. And as you see, all we do is we have a brim on the inside of that opening and nowhere else. That is crazy useful. And if you want, you can go ahead and say, well, now instead I want outer brim only. Reslice that bad girl, and you can see there's nothing on the inside, but we got brim on the outside. Now what I want to do is I want to make it relatively large. Let's go 5mm, and we're going to turn on our support material, and I'm going to show you guys what this looks like. Another thing to note, we're going to start with grid support. So you're going to see what grid support looks like. We're changing to just support enforcers only, which you saw me do the painting earlier. We can see that the brim is still attached to the part. Now there are some support base layers here. You can modify this. The first layer expansion is 3mm. I prefer 1mm at best. But let's also go ahead and change it to snug support so you can see what snug looks like. You can see that it really just kind of hugs those edges. And a little bit of movement out there to give you a bit of a nicer base layer. You can go down to 0 if you want. But we see where we have a brim that support material does not do its support base layers because it uses the brim as that. This is good, especially when you're using parts that need to have that brim that would necessarily warp without it. Something like a ABS or ASA would have that problem. But let's mess around with painting. All right, we now have loaded in the MMU. This is the purge block, is what it is. I don't want to get into that today. But we can go ahead and grabbing our paintbrush and start painting. So we can change our extruder colors. So orange is good. Let's change the pink to a nice, I don't know, a nice blue. Sure, we'll go with that. It doesn't need to be perfect, just something so you can see. It can be useful if, for some reason, you are working on a part where having the exact colors would make sense. I found it to be useful. We can do smart fill by utilizing the right click. We can click to fill areas. I'm looking to see what colors I want things to be. Hat can be blue. We're going to change that back. We want to get a red. Let's go to extruder 3, which its color should be red. I should have had all the hex codes ready, but I didn't, so that's my fault. But there you guys go. It is very, very simple. And if I wanted to, I'm using the smart fill. I can use bucket fill, which will just grab everything on that object. Let's Control Z that, so that's not the issue. We can even do the brush, where we can just paint with a brush. So a great example of this was on Wexter's Bob Ross, where you could paint the pupils to be whatever color that you wanted. This is crazy useful when you look at minis. Let's grab a mini and let's get painting. We're going to bring in the Wexter mini Bob Ross. Now, I don't know which one of these I want, but we're going to bring it in just because I can. One of them has the squirrel. We want the one with the squirrel. All right, let's see what we got here. I like V2. V2 will be the easiest to print, so let's do V2. We got our V2 Bob Ross, and what'll happen is you can see now the purge block is the exact same height. Okay, now you can scale the purge blocks, but again, not gonna get too far into that. When we look at our mini dude, he is a little, you know, worse for wear. So we're going to go with extruder 5. We're going to change that color to black. Like my soul. We can just come in here and just little pupils. And it's, you know, a little bit crazy. What we can do is we can do smart fill now. We can grab a white. We can fill his eyes. Now, what will happen is that it is going to fill over. So go back to the brush. Repaint those in, but as you can see, you know, we can make Bob look a little bit weird. But this gives you lots of options to be able to paint whatever you want. Let's say we want to give this guy some white teeth. We're going to do our smart fill right on the mouth, pow, right in the kisser, and we got that rolling just fine. And this allows you to do really, really good painting. Now, one thing that we can see is that the smart fill wants to fill the entire head and beard, but we don't want that. Let's go back to extruder 1. Let's grab ourselves a brown. Brown is a weird color, but we're going to change our smart fill angle so that it picks up less. So we can see that it's going onto the collar. We don't want that. So let's go down to 18. That should be good. It's going to take us a little bit and might require us to come back and do manual painting. So we can grab our brush, get our brush size, and just come in here and paint us some happy little hairs. But when you look at all of this, you get a lot better painting than you did previously. Previously, you had to have, you know, different materials. Oh, you can see I got the angle there. If we go to, I'd like to make his collar black. Let's do smart fill. I'm going to turn the angle down a little bit more and just smart fill that collar, smart fill that collar. But it could be legitimately whatever color we want. We can go back to extruder 3. Let's see, he wants a red shirt. Got himself a red shirt. This is what MMU painting is all about. You can make your models whatever weird color you do so desire, and there is nobody that can tell you otherwise. Now, if we went with the bucket fill, it's literally just gonna go with everything that it can touch. So we have Dennis Rodman with a paintbrush and a squirrel. Don't worry about it if you don't get that joke. But there you guys go. Lots of availability here inside of Prusa 2.4. And I think the MMU painting is one of the biggest ones that matter here, because we can now go to slice, and it does take a while for MMU. So be aware that it is going to take a while for MMU. But coming here, we can see that I don't have all the colors set appropriately, so it looks a little bit weird. But there you go. You can see that every single thing here is laid out for you. Once we've got our weird ass Bob Ross printed, we can see that this didn't go right. We've got apparently one little tool change up here somewhere, and that's pretty simple. I can go back in and work on painting it. But we see that every single thing in here is completely figured out for us. We know that extruder 5 needs 0.8, extruder 4 needs 24.36 grams. And this is great. It's going to take 9 hours with 396 tool changes. But there is more than just MMU painting. We showed you guys the brims, we showed you MMU painting, we showed you dark mode, although I'm not a massive fan of it. We can even look at doing draft shields. Underneath skirt and brim, we can find ourselves the draft shield. We can do limited or enabled, so if we go to limited, we're going to take a look at it and let's see what happens when we do a print with a limited draft shield. With a full draft shield, we can see that we also are able to wipe into the draft shield itself, reducing the overall weight of our purge block, which I think is pretty awesome. Next, we're going to get away from the painting. So let's go back into our single extruder. Back on the non-MMU printer, we're going to play around with mesh simplification. We can right click and do simplify model. This will let us do whatever amount of detail that we want. Okay, so we'll put him over here, put this up here. And again, Wexter, it's a pretty awesome model. I've always loved this model. It's actually on our main set, which is always a lot of fun. So we can go ahead and remove the detail, or we can kind of leave it the way it is, but let's go extra low detail. That's not enough. We can decimate even further. I want 0 triangles. Perfect. I love it. I want to see, can I do like 99? What does 99 triangles look? Wow. All right. 99.9. Beautiful. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is modern art. Put that up in a museum. That's modern art. But that's the cool thing about doing mesh simplification, especially if you bring in a model with a ton of triangles, something that is way too complicated and would take forever to slice, you can easily simplify it up. Now, let's say we wanted to do a bunch of these guys. We wanted to print them sequentially, so let's look at printing everything sequentially. If we go into our print settings, something else to note, if you can't easily find something, you can just do sequential printing. See, if we click that, it's going to take us right to where it needs to be. So we're going to complete individual objects, and the extruder clearance, this is normal for a Mark 3S, 45 millimeter radius, and then 20 millimeters in height. Now, I don't know if it needs to be more than that, but, you know, that's the way it's going to be. So now when we move our parts, when you do have things getting close, it will show you where those potential collisions are located. And if we just go here and we click arrange, it's going to make certain that everything can be away and you don't have any collision issues whatsoever. Now, it is saying some objects are too tall and cannot be printed without extruder collisions. And this makes sense because if you go higher, sequential printing as it comes down is going to slam into your part. Let's just go with 2, because I'm guessing it would do front to back. Exactly. So now we're not going to have issues. Now, if we want to look at doing individual parts, sequential printing has gotten much better. One of the big things that sequential printing brings, and you can find it underneath output options, it's right there. When you get parts too close to each other, you'll see the outlines. So if they're here, chances are they're going to interfere, and it's going to give me invalid data. So right here, these would properly, according to the system, sequentially print. And that can be very useful if you need to do a bunch of parts and you're worried about one of them potentially failing. Now, if you are worried about that, you can use Octoprint and the cancel objects made by my buddy Paul. We're gonna have a video coming up on that soon, so make sure you guys get subscribed if you want to see that. Cancel objects is pretty useful. But we see that it's one at a time. This would be cool for time lapses. We might have to do this one day for time lapses. But realistically, sequential printing is very niche use case scenarios. If you do want to see the tip of the day, you can always go under help and show tip of the day, and it will cycle through different tips, and Joe Clippy down there at the bottom is going to be there to help you out all the dang time, and I always love those. We've got lots of keyboard shortcuts that are also available that you might not have known about. Now, one thing that I've talked about before, which is data collection, is now offered inside of Prusa Slicer. It is only shown once. And if you do choose to send, you can send as much or as little data as you want, and they show you precisely what you're sending. If you choose no, you'll never see it again. If you choose yes, you'll never see it again. It's a one-time dialogue, and unfortunately, because I was part of the alphas and the betas, I already said what I wanted to say. We do send some data to Prusa, but I only do that because I know what it is. They show you exactly what the data is, and I think that is very, very useful. Now, I don't like it. I still don't like data collection, but I think this is the right way to do it. There are right ways and there are wrong ways. This is the right way. You now also have the ability to move parts below the build surface. This was not possible before. And it will just auto cut the parts to, you know, whatever it is. And it shows sinking. God, I wish there could be a Titanic reference here. Oh, that would be so funny. And yes, normally you could just use the cut tool. If you're trying to just hit a line and you don't want to deal with the cut tool, the sinking method is pretty great. And I will say, as someone that wants to make their own custom print ears sometimes for the brims, the syncing feature is really, really nice. It was not possible previously, and you had to really get stuff exactly right. Now I can just sync it until it makes sense to me. Now, can you move it above the bed? No. So you can't move things above the bed to fully support it, which would be ridiculous anyways. But you can move it into the bed. Now, the entire thing will be available on Prusa Slicer's GitHub. We'll link to it down in that description down below. We're going to do a lot of PrusaSlicer 2.4 content, very short form videos coming up throughout the next couple of months, so make sure you guys stay tuned if that's something that you want to see. But that's really all I have for you guys. The original 2.4 Alpha 1 video that we did goes through a lot of what we see here, but this is just so much more polished, and especially with the MMU painting, the snug supports, the thin bridges, and so much more. And I haven't even gotten into the SLA. That's going to be its own video, so we can talk more about resin supports and resin orientation. I think PrusaSlicer implements it really, really well. That's all I have for you guys today in this one. Leave your comments down below. I'd love to know what your favorite new feature of PrusaSlicer 2.4 is, and how much you don't miss 2.3.3, I think was the last one. Anyways, stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. Anyone that used PrusaSlicer 2.3 that put a brim on something, because remember, if you like it, then you should put a brim on it. Why do I don't know why I say these things, but I say them. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video. And again, I apologize. The cat and I got into a bit of a disagreement, and she won. So our marketing is going to be changing. She is our director of marketing after all. I do want to give a massive thank you to all of our patrons, whose names, the $5 tier and higher, are listed right next to me. If you want to support this channel directly, you can do so at patreon.com/3dmusketeers, with tiers starting as low as $1. Your help is greatly appreciated and enables us to do content like this as often as we do. Right below me will be the entire Prusa Slicer series, so you can take a look at what it used to be and what it is moving toward. We are going to be doing more videos there, of course, so stay tuned. And right next to that will be a perfectly handpicked video made especially just for you. I will see you guys down in those comments, and in the next one, take care.